Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Future of Space. I'm your host, Daniel Fox. Our guest today is Kevin Sproge. Kevin is the CEO of Zero G. After retiring from the Navy, where he flew more than 3,000 hours, including over 80 combat missions and over 500 carrier-arrested landings, Kevin joined Blue Origin as a system engineer on the new Shepard Program. He was rapidly promoted to directors, system architecture, and took on the additional responsibility of developing the new Shepard astronaut training program. He was selected as one of the first two Blue Origin CrewMember 7, and was the trainer for the historic Blue Origin first human flight of Jeff Bezos, Mark Bezos, Wally Funk, and Oliver Daemon. He both trained and functioned operationally as either CrewMember 7 or CapCom for all of Blue Origin astronaut missions in 2021 and 2022. He joined Aerospace in 2022 as the Director of Safety and Mission Assurance for the space destination sector and worked to design and build the world's first purely commercial space station. He joined Zero G as a CEO in January of 2024. Kevin, welcome to the Future of Space.
Good morning, Daniel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get into floating in zero gravity, could you share with us 3 words that for you capture the essence of space?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first word is unknown. I think I use that word because we almost daily are discovering new things about space that we didn't previously know. And I think we've only just started scratching the surface of what is out there to explore and to find out. So tremendous unknown. My second, which ties directly to the first, is excitement, because it is really exciting to know that there's this unknown out there and to go and start making the discoveries. And I love that about this industry. I love that about the pace that we're now starting to see. I mean, just this morning we launched 4 humans to a place that humans haven't been in over 50 years. And that's the Polaris Dawn mission above our Van Allen belt. So it really feels like the excitement is really starting to build, which is great. And then the final word is perseverance. Space it's very difficult. It's technically challenging. It is tremendously hard on the human body, especially on long duration space flight. And for us to have a human presence in space is going to require a tremendous amount of perseverance, and we're going to make mistakes along the way. There's going to be failures, but as we learn, and if we can persevere, I think that we can eventually spread humanity to the stars.
Absolutely. So you were a pilot flying jets. Was that a path to become an astronaut? Is that the original intent that you had before, or the stars and astronauts in the industry that you found yourself was more kind of a consequence?
Yeah, so my origin story starts when I was 8 years old, and I'm a native New Yorker. I was born in the Bronx, New York. My parents are native New Yorkers, and they took me when I was 8 to the Intrepid Air and Space Museum, just on the Hudson River in New York. And at the time, the Intrepid had, it's a retired aircraft carrier. They had a huge exhibit on the Navy astronauts, the naval aviator astronauts. So Alan Shepard, Jim Lovell, John Glenn, and I was absolutely taken aback and inspired. I walked off the ship that day at 8 years old. I looked at my parents and I said, okay, I've got the life plan all figured out. I am going to go to the Naval Academy. I'm going to be a Navy carrier pilot, a Navy test pilot, and then I'm going to go be an astronaut. And been working at it pretty much since that day. I've got most of it done. I'm still working on the astronaut piece, but it's been a hell of a ride. So I'm enjoying every day of it.
When you were at Blue Origin, what does CrewMember 7 stands for?
CrewMember 7 is a concept. It was initially developed by Jeff Ashby, who's a former NASA astronaut, former shuttle commander, and came in at Blue. He was one of the very early employees at Blue. And the idea was in building New Shepard, it has 6 places in the capsule, 6 seats. And this person who was going to be the astronaut trainer was going to be, for all intents and purposes, another member of the crew. So we called them CrewMember 7. And when New Shepard astronauts show up to West Texas to do their training, CrewMember 7 meets them when they show up at the astronaut village. They live with them at the astronaut village. They share meals with them. They drive them to and from the training site every day. They conduct the training along with the CapCom. And On launch day, your crew member 7 walks you up the tower, puts you in the capsule, straps you in, has a few words, closes the hatch, and then 15 minutes later, when you land in the desert, your crew member 7 is there to open your hatch and welcome you back to Earth. So the crew member 7 is with the astronauts every step of their journey except for the actual flight. And then they are supported by CapCom, who's another crew member 7 trained individual. And CapCom obviously stays in mission control and works with the flight director. They're the one talking to the crew while they're on board the capsule. They help with the training. And so my compadre at Blue Origin, the first 2 crew member 7s, was Sarah Knights, who, if you haven't had a chance to speak to, she'd be a great suggestion for your podcast, honestly. She's phenomenal. And so her and I would trade off between CapCom and crew member 7 for those first several missions in 2021 and 2022.
What was the thread of all the Blue Origin astronauts that landed, their reaction? I mean, we know William Shatner's kind of really emotional moment when he came back. But from your perspective, was there kind of a commonality or a thread between all these people that came back from their voyage?
Yeah, I do. I think Bill, by far, he had the most visible reaction. I mean, he came out of the capsule. I mean, tears coming down his face. He was very, very moved. And he spoke very, very eloquently after his flight about how he saw the difference between life and death, looking down at life and looking up at blackness and death. And I mean, he just has such a gift for words. That sentiment was, in general, most of our astronauts felt that in one way or another. And a lot of the time they would land and we would be listening to them in the capsule. And they, as they're waiting for their crew member 7 to come up and open the hatch, and they're just very taken aback. They're very overwhelmed by the experience that they just had. And a lot of them came out, and what we found was, initially there's this huge wave of excitement, and their loved ones come up and they meet them, and we have a champagne toast in the desert, and it's very celebratory. And then we get back to the astronaut village a couple hours later, and then the contemplation would set in. And we found that afternoon they tended to, they were also very, very tired because they got up very, very early for the flight. But we would start to see it. We'd see it on their faces. We'd see it on how they were talking, and they were really starting to emotionally process this journey that they just went on. And it was the emotional reaction was very, very similar to what Bill so eloquently described, in that they had gone to this foreign environment and seen it, and gone to a place that very few humans had actually ever been to.
Was that the expectation of processing emotions, or the overview effect and what it represents? Was that also part of the initial training before they actually go up?
It was very interesting. I think I can't even tell you how many dress rehearsals we did for First Human Flight with Jeff and Mark and Wally and Oliver. And I think technically we were very, very prepared. I think as a crew, as a whole team, Blue Origin, as a company, we were not prepared for the emotional part. And he's going to be very upset with me for telling this story, but it kind of puts the emphasis on it. Oliver's father, Oliver Daemon, who's 18 years old, his father, Joseph. So I came off the tower. We came back to what we call fallback 1, which is where all the families were. It's about 2 miles away from the rocket. And we're standing there, listening to the countdown, and, the rocket engine, fires, and the rocket starts to rise. It clears the tower, and I've got my arm around Joseph on one side, and I've got my arm around Wally's companion, Mary, on the other. And I look over at Joseph, and he's got tears streaming down his eyes, and he looks at me just as the rocket clears, and he goes, "Oh my God, Kevin, what have I just done?" Because he was so overwhelmed by the amount. He had just strapped his child to this rocket and sent him to space. And he got hit by that. In that moment, that's what he felt. And we found out in our debrief and from that flight that it's an emotional experience for the astronauts, but it's an equally emotional experience for their loved ones and their spectators that are there with, sharing that with them. And we actually added content to our training. We added an entire session with the guests to help them prepare for this experience, and to just give them a little bit more information on, here's why your loved one is going to be safe, and here's all the redundant systems, and here's how the escape system works, so that if there's a problem, they're going to get away from the rocket and they're going to parachute down safely. And I think we found that as we got more experience managing the emotions, was an equally important part of the job compared to or in addition to the technical training that we put them through.
Which is a great segue to the next question. What is the human story of space? We know the science aspect of it, the technology aspect of it. There's the geopolitics. There's going to be a bunch of different stories. But I think at the core, what is the human story of space?
I think fundamentally, the human story of space is the human story, period. And humans have this desire to explore. I think it's hardwired into our DNA. We want to go find out what is out there. We want to uncover new things. Like I mentioned, unknown, the great unknown. Space is the great unknown. And we have a desire to go and explore it. I mean, in earlier times, there was, why did Columbus discover America? Well, he was looking for a route to, an economic reason, but he also wanted to find out what was out there because people said you couldn't go west. Here there be monsters, and he would sail off the end of the sea, and he needed to find out if that was true. And the great age of exploration, was about discovering the unknown. And I think that's what we see in space. It's that human desire to discover the unknown, to make the discoveries for the benefit of all humanity.
To your point, for the benefit of humanity, how important are these new frontiers for humanity? I mean, for people who can't really resonate with space and not try to understand what is the value of these new frontiers, why do we push? Why do we go to these places? How can it be connected to them?
I think it's absolutely critical, space in particular, because at the moment, humanity, we are a single species on a single planet. And we are one catastrophic disaster away from ending our species. That could be self-imposed. That could be, a nuclear, exchange. That could be some kind of ecological disaster. It could be something we have no control over. It could be a giant meteorite, hits the Earth. It's happened before. We know that in the fossil record, and that could end all life on Earth once again. So the fact that if we have this ability to leave this planet and spread out, we can ensure the survival of our species and ensure the survival of humanity. That's certainly not something we're likely to see in our lifetime, at least on a large scale, but it's a goal worth pursuing. And, most of us in this industry, we truly believe that, and we truly believe it, it is intergenerational, and we may not see it, but the foundation we're laying now is going to enable that in the future. And then you think, as we start to move off the planet, now we have the ability to do things for the benefit of everyone. If we can move heavy industry up into orbit, things like power generation, things like, heavy industry requires a lot of toxic chemicals, a lot of toxic, metals. If we can do on-orbit manufacturing, then we can take all of that pollution, we can take all of the bad effects off our planet, which allows everyone who stays back on Earth to live a better, healthier, more productive life. And that's a tremendous goal worth pursuing. The climate change is real. You can argue whether it's 100% human caused or partially human caused or whatever. Don't want to get into the politics of that, but the fact of the matter is we have one planet and we should want to take care of it. And one of the ways we can do that is getting ourselves to orbit, which allows us to take a lot of the destructive things off our one world. And, again, for the benefit of all.
This is what we've been able to achieve now, in North America and some of like in Europe, in relationship with nature, is we're not depending of it anymore as we used to. So now we can just protect it and move the dependence that we used to have to places that have less impact. And so we can have national parks because we're not consumed with harvesting or taking the resources away. And going to space will bring that also. If we can harvest from places that are more barren and move servers that are just, consuming a lot of, they need cold environment, but now space is just this place that just soaks up all the heat. So that will be better. It doesn't need the same kind of infrastructure that you have on Earth. Kevin, so now you're flying 0G. Big plane goes up and down, creates the effect of zero gravity where you can test, you can experiment, you can do a lot of things. How has it been to be CEO of such a groundbreaking company?
It's been a roller coaster ride, and I say that a little bit in as a pun. I took over in January. This company, we're actually celebrating our 20th anniversary of commercial operation this year in 2024. So in 2004, they started commercial operations. It was actually founded in 1993 by Pierre Diamandis and Ray Croneiss and Byron Lichtenberg. So the company has a really long tradition and history of success, and the whole idea was to bring the NASA parabolic flight program that trained astronauts to people. So anyone who had an interest in space, anyone who wanted to experience weightlessness had the opportunity to. And they've done that, and they've done that now for 20 years of commercial operation. My biggest task is to try to really start to scale the company. I think the company was actually even 20 years early. And now this kind of what I call the second great wave of space exploration, the commercial wave, has captured the public's imagination again. You're starting to see a lot more launch activity. You're starting to see a lot more interest in commercialization of space. And we are positioned to really play a key role in that, not just on the consumer side and letting people who are now much more interested in space get to experience it, but also on the research and development side where, we say, our motto is come break your equipment on our airplane before you get to orbit. And we mean that very seriously. We want you to come on board G-Force One, fly parabolic, test your equipment, and find out where it's going to go wrong, because the cost to do it on my airplane is, tremendously less than if you get on orbit and you install an ISS and then you break on day one and now you're stuck for your 4-month stay and get no data out of it. So we provide a tremendous test and evaluation and research and development platform. And it's an area of the business we're really trying to expand, and we're seeing a lot of demand there as well, which is exciting.
So how much testing can you do in these flights? Because it's not like you go up and then suddenly there's zero gravity and then you can kind of really dig in and spend 15, 20 an hour in zero gravity. You have these moments, right? You can simulate different gravities. So from a standpoint of experimentation, like how much time or how does it work so that it can go and say, that's not working or that it's working?
It's funny. You would be surprised at how much our researchers can accomplish in a single parabola in terms of research and data collection. The way it works is, the plane starts at about 18,000 feet and initiates a climb, climbs up to about 34,000 feet, and then the pilots push over. And in that pushing over, transitioning from the climb to the dive, that's where you go to zero gravity. And so that lasts about 30 seconds. And there's transition period on the front side and the back side where you're not quite at true microgravity. So, for research purposes, they get about 20 to 25 seconds of true, pure microgravity. In a typical research flight, we'll do 30 of those parabolas. So in that time, they'll get about 15 minutes of floating time, of zero gravity time that they can utilize for research. And that's a good amount of research that they can do. And we see things, our last research campaign, we had a laser welding experiment on board. We've done bioprinting, skin cells, heart cells. We've done freeze-dried blood recombination so that you could carry freeze-dried blood on a long-duration mission. And then if you needed it to support an astronaut, because then you don't have the mass of the liquid that you have to worry about. We have done avionics experiments. We fly cryogenic rigs where they're working on new ECLSS systems for both future long-duration space flights, but also improvements to ISS. ECLSS is Environmental Control System. So we can do almost anything. Done human space flight. We just did a large campaign with Collins Aerospace for their now defunct ISS spacesuit replacement. One of the really exciting things about our company is, and a lot of people don't know this, we can not just do zero gravity, but we can do Martian and lunar gravity as well. And that's a growth area as well, where we can go and provide you with 30 parabolas of just pure lunar gravity at 1/6, which is really exciting because obviously there's a lot of interest in Artemis, but also commercialization of the moon. And that's an area where it's very, very difficult to simulate lunar in the neutral buoyancy laboratory because you have to weight everything down to get you down to the bottom of the pool. And so now you're carrying all that extra mass around, where we can give you true lunar gravity environment on the airplane. So we see a lot of interest in the lunar and the Martian research as well.
You're probably under NDA, maybe not, but what is the most surprising experiment that you've witnessed on one of your flights?
I won't say specifics. I am really fascinated by all of the biomedical and the biopharma that we see. I think the 3D printing of cells of various kinds is really exciting. And I think, again, talking, stepping back to, how is space to the benefit of humanity, the things you can do in microgravity with structures. So you basically start with this lattice and you can print the cells on the lattice. In microgravity, that lattice doesn't collapse. So you can print potentially whole organs, and then you can deorbit those and bring those back to Earth and you can have your own stem cells grow your own organ. So say you're in congestive heart failure, you can potentially grow a heart on orbit, have that brought back to Earth, and so that you can survive heart disease. Now, is that in my lifetime? We'll see. But how exciting is that? That is just groundbreaking stuff. And the foundation for that is being laid on our airplane on these research campaigns where these researchers coming up and they're printing cells 30 seconds at a time and proving the concept that printing cells in microgravity is effective. And, then they'll get up to orbit and they'll get to do it on a larger scale. They printed an entire meniscus on the ISS last year for a knee. And, so this is happening in real time today. They're starting to see this stuff. So that's the area I'm really, really excited about is, direct benefit to humans by doing this research.
I really had this sense of vision of the future when I read Jeremy, the actor from Marvel who played Hawkeye, got crushed over by a snowcat some years ago. And in his physical therapy, it was zero gravity physical therapy. And I really, in that moment, saw how in the future you could get into an accident, go up to low orbit and go into a therapy where not only your wounds are being treated, but then you have the capacity for your body to get back in shape in an environment that is less strenuous than here on Earth. So next thing we know, there's going to be all the medical facilities in low orbit. And then when it's ready, you just push a button and then you have an Amazon delivery, a little parachute that comes down.
Yeah, the vast majority of human research in orbit is on NASA astronauts on long duration space flight. And it is uniformly how the human body degrades in microgravity. And that is certainly true because we are optimized for a 1G environment on Earth, and you get up to orbit and your muscles are not required to push against gravity anymore, and so the atrophy sets in. But there is very interesting, just in the concept phase research of things like, injuries, sports injuries. There's really some interesting research on traumatic brain injury potential for microgravity to help with traumatic brain injuries, which, huge consequence in the veteran community, huge consequence in the, a lot of the sports community that's been brought, the NFL in particular. It's been a high interest item. A lot of these guys retire and have lifelong debilitating injuries and illnesses that a microgravity therapy could potentially alleviate some of their pain and suffering. So I think there's some really, really interesting things that are going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years in that space.
Besides the experiments, the science and technology experiments on board the Zero-G, you also do personal experiences, people who want to get married, but also there's been film shooting. Tony Hawk has been up. Recently, I think Fox News went up, but there's a broad variety of experience that you can have in the plane, correct?
Yeah, so we have 3 lines of business. We talk extensively about our research line of business. We have what we call our consumer line of business, which is anybody who wants can book a seat on one of our flights and come and experience zero gravity. It's not a simulation; it's actual, real microgravity, and you get to float around and feel what astronauts feel on orbit. And then our third line of business we call our charter line of business, and that is you can kind of use the plane for anything you want, really. And we've done media productions, we've done photo shoots, in fact, we just this week, Elf Cosmetics released a music video with an up-and-coming recording artist named Charlotte Benjamin. And she came on board and sang her single on the plane, and that music video just released. And that was really fun to shoot and see her do it. And she took to the microgravity environment really, really well. It's fun to watch her in the finished product of the video floating around because she did great. But yeah, we've done celebrities on board, we've done marketing campaigns, We've done sports campaigns. We've done, in fact, Polaris Dawn, who just launched today, they trained with us in 2022. They did a flight just for training. And in fact, Jared actually brought his families of the crew on board for a second flight so that they could experience what the crew would be feeling when they got on orbit. So all of those things are tremendous capability that we have on the plane. You don't need wires, you don't need CGI. We can give you real actual microgravity.
And we sent 275 plush penguins earlier this year for World Penguin Day.
That was by far one of the funnest flights I've ever done. I hope anybody who's listening look for World Penguin Day Zero Gravity through our partnership with Space to Sea. We brought 275 penguins and flew them in zero gravity, and those are going to be given to the Voyagers. And I mean, me and the entire team, we just cackled laughing the entire time we were shooting that video because we had so much fun. It was craziness. It was great.
I believe one got left over and now it's flying. He's part of the crew flying up on every flight, correct?
So we do. We have a triple-size penguin that stays with the airplane. He is our official zero gravity indicator, our Space to Sea penguin. And in fact, he is flying this weekend in Las Vegas. We have 2 flights out of Las Vegas, and he will be on the flight representing.
We got to start an Instagram account for that penguin.
Yeah, well, we'll definitely post them on our company account for sure.
Kevin, what's the common feeling from people who go up and experience zero G and then they come back and they're like, I didn't expect this. I didn't think it was like that. Taking them by surprise.
The most common comment that we get is that it was like nothing else I've ever experienced. And that makes sense because it is like nothing else you've ever experienced. I mean, there is no analog to actual zero gravity experience. I mean, the closest thing, and we see this on the plane, when your brain gets in zero gravity for the first time, what it tries to do is it tries to find, something that in its experience to help you figure out this new environment. And it goes right to swimming because, okay, I'm floating, I floated in water before. So, all right. And then what we see is people start kicking and they start, moving their arms as if they're trying to swim. Unfortunately, there's no water to push against. So all they end up doing is floating and then flailing about a little bit. And they discover very quickly that just leave your whole body, calm and arms and legs still. And it is an education in Newton's laws of motion because if you start going one direction, you don't stop until you hit a wall or another person. And you just have to accept that you're going in that direction and you can't really do anything to change it until you can push off again. And it's very difficult when you're used to being able to push against, gravity for your whole life. So people come off the plane and they are surprised by the environment. It's like nothing they've ever experienced. But they're also surprised that they adapt the human body and the human mind is tremendously capable of adapting to environments, and they adapt to the environment very, very quickly. So in on our consumer flights, we do 15 parabolas, so about 7.5 minutes. So usually by about parabola 5 or 6, folks have gotten it, and now they're starting to have fun, and they're getting to do flips, and they're getting to crawl their way all the way around the cabin, and they're getting to do some fun stuff like stand on the ceiling and take pictures upside down. So the capacity of the human mind and the body to adjust to a completely foreign environment is really impressive.
And that's one of the arguments. We're getting into a time where a lot of experiences can be replicated into virtual reality. But that can only take you so far. There's a physicality to life that cannot be replicated into a simulator. I mean, even technology-wise, if you have the capacity to put someone weightless, you still have the gravity that you cannot replicate, the lack of gravity. How important it is for you that, even as we go into more technology into the future, there's nothing that beats the real experience.
I think you said it really well. I think the technology has its place. The digitalization of kind of everything it's trending, it's happening, it's increasing, and it's in our daily lives. I think it has a place. It has certainly provided tremendous gains in things like productivity and certainly the knowledge that's out there that's accessible at the touch of a finger. But I agree, the physicality of being in a microgravity environment, floating in zero G, you cannot replicate by wearing a VR headset. You can see what that would look like, but you can't feel it. You can't feel that you're moving left and you want to go right, but you can't do anything about it. And you start rotating and you just got to be still, or you want to try to swim. I mean, it's so different than going for a hike in a forest. I mean, you can put on a headset and see what that looks like, but you can't smell and feel the moisture in the air and hear the sounds, completely surround you. You'll feel the soil under your feet as you're walking and the rocks. And so the truly immersive experience is still in real life. And I think it's an important part of being human, is to be in that real moment to experience those things.
Which is one of the arguments with the overview effect about the importance of going over there, going physically, so you can have the perspective. You could look at the planet Earth with space in a simulator with a virtual headset, and you get the visual replication of it. But I think that to get that emotional transformation, you need to be there physically. I think that your body has to be in a vulnerable place, so it can't really understand what's going on, so that there's a shift happen rather than stepping into an environment that you can predict. And so I guess it's the same thing in the zero-G.
Yeah, and in fact, I don't remember if this was NASA research or was a university research, but they've actually done research on the overview effect, and they've shown people pictures of the Earth from space in videos, and they did not find the same. I mean, astronauts have talked about coming home fundamentally transformed, a value system change from truly experiencing the fragility of our planet from viewing it from orbit. And they don't see that same effect just by, and they show them the same pictures, they show them the same view, but it's the being there, looking down, seeing the vertical definition of the mountains and the clouds, and seeing, truly experiencing the very thin blue line that is all that separates Earth between life and death. And so that it takes going there and seeing it and experiencing it to truly get that fundamental value shift that we see in astronauts.
And I think there's going to be also like a really different experience from when you go up on Blue Origin. There's obviously the G-force. It's super high charge of adrenaline. And then you come back and you start to process. If you go up on the ISS, you go beyond that adrenaline rush. The adrenaline starts to settle, and then you start to process everything as you see it. Companies like Space Perspective will create a total different experience because you have 6 hours of gently going out. It's not adrenaline based because you don't have zero gravity, you don't have all that G-force, and then you have 6 hours to frame, to structure the narrative so that people can process what they're looking at. So all these opportunities present themselves. It's going to be really interesting to see how people react differently to these experiences.
Yeah, I'm incredibly excited about Space Perspectives and just all the opportunities that are out there. And I think you're right. I think it's going to be interesting to see how people experience the different options differently. One thing we do know is that NASA astronauts on ISS, and they're very, very busy. They have very full schedules. But when they get free time, the majority of them spend a lot of that free time just down in the cupola looking out the window and looking at Earth, taking pictures and just experiencing it. And I think we are going to, especially, an opportunity like Space Perspective, where you have that 6 hour flight where you can see the Earth from space, you can see the curvature of the Earth, you can see the blue of the atmosphere. I think that's going to be a very cerebral experience for folks. It's going to be very emotional, I think, surprisingly so.
Kevin, you've flown jets. You've trained astronauts. You've been right next to Jeff Bezos and Mark Bezos as they went up to space, developing the astronaut program, and just kind of being there for so many people and really experiencing different challenges and different physicality of life. What would be Kevin's 3 words of wisdom?
So my 3 words of wisdom are never give up. There's a picture I had, and it got me all through the Naval Academy. It went with me to flight school. I took it on every deployment. And it's a picture of a swamp. And there's a crane standing in the swamp. And the crane has a frog in his mouth. And the frog's hands are around the crane's neck. And the caption on the photo is, "Don't ever give up." That is the story of my career. That's the story of my life, is you are going to face failure. You are going to face adversity. It is a part of living. It's a part of, you can't make progress without those things. Embrace that. And when you things seem that you're in your darkest time, grab that bird by his neck and don't let go, and don't let him swallow you. And you keep fighting.
So what do you think is a failure in education right now? Understanding that life is made of failures and setbacks and challenges. Do you think that we've shied away too much from that reality and we're not preparing people enough to deal with it, so that when life is actually a little bit darker than we expected, we don't have the tools to use that opportunity to grow and to become better?
I do. I think we have, as a society, especially in America, we've gotten away from resiliency as a value. And you call it. I've heard safetyism, talked about before, where we can't let kids, fall and get scraped up and get hurt on the playground. And I was a child of the '80s. I mean, I would, in the summertime, I left the house at 7 a.m. and I didn't come home until my dad whistled at 10, 11 o'clock at night. They just didn't see me. I'd eat at a friend's house. I'd be out, doing rocks and woods and hikes and all over the place on my bike. And you don't really see that anymore. There's a desire to keep kids safe. And certainly I think the world is a more dangerous place than it was when I was growing up. So I appreciate that. But, and kids today have way more challenges than I did. I mean, the whole social media thing, they are bombarded with these images of you are not good enough because all of these other people are better than you. And we're seeing it. We're seeing a mental health epidemic amongst our kids. And I have two boys. I have two teenagers. One's 19, one's 16. And, I see it now. It's a very challenging environment. But I do think that teaching our kids to be resilient and to understand that failure is part of it. And it's okay to fail. It's okay to fall. And part of learning and part of living is picking yourself back up and moving forward. And it's not always going to be good. It's not always going to be easy. But there's a lot of learning and a lot of worth in doing it that way. And I tried to do that with my own kids, and I'd like to see schools do that a little bit more going forward, because we're going to need that. Like I mentioned, my third word for space is perseverance. We're going to need people who are willing to go and persevere, because this is going to be really, technically and from a human perspective, very, very difficult to get to that point where we can leave the planet and spread out to our solar system and eventually outside our solar system.
Being a teenager nowadays, personally, I'm extremely grateful that I grew up in the time that I grew up and not having to deal with social media, because there are things that I did when I was in my teenage years that are much better to remain in the past, only to my memory.
You and me both.
I mean, it's really sad that like now kids have this timestamp on things that are truly, I don't think that it's meant to be recorded, because it's such a time of experimentation and making mistakes and having the capacity to have a zone where you can fail, you can try, this is what it is, as long as you're surrounded by an environment that can help you shape and navigate that area. But now today it's just black and white. If you mess up there, just cross your finger to be lucky that no one recorded it, or no one is going to abuse it, and no one is going to take it out of context. And now suddenly you have a PR crisis when you're 16 years old.
I agree. It's kids do stupid things, especially teenagers, and that's part of growing up, and it's part of learning not to do stupid things in the future. And we should not be at a point where one stupid thing when you're 17 years old defines you for the rest of your life, and makes you unemployable because you posted something stupid on the internet. It's catastrophically bad for our society to do that. You've got to be able to live. You've got to be able to make these mistakes and learn. It's the only way to become an adult, is to do all the stupid stuff as a teen.
And it's so tough, because the resilience and the toughness that was developed in the past was really kind of out of necessity. It's just that parents didn't really have the choice or the bandwidth to offer what today parents offer. And today it really comes from a place of love. They love their children so that they don't want them to have the same kind of difficulties that they had when they grew up. But the consequence of that is that they don't get to develop the thick skin or the resilience. So now that has to be more mentally planned from a parent's perspective, from where like, I know it's hard, but I have to go beyond this initial instinct that I have to protect you. You have to fail. So it's much harder on the parent side.
Yeah, it really is. And, still raising my boys, and, one's in college and one's junior high school. It's always been really challenging. It's particularly challenging in this day and age with all of those messages and all those challenges. And, I don't doubt for any second that most parents, truly love their kids and they want their best for them. So, but yeah, it's really hard to figure out what's the right thing to do when you're trying to raise a kid. And unfortunately, there's no real good manuals out there. So read any 3 books on parenting and you'll get 7 opinions.
And whatever works today doesn't work tomorrow.
Right.
Have they gone on the zero-G flights?
Yeah, both of my boys have flown on the airplane as kids. By the way, we can fly kids as 8 years old with a parent. And then they are both now actually training to be coaches on the airplane, so that they will be on the airplane and help new customers adapt to the environment. So they're both working on that now.
Amazing. Well, we'll make sure all the links to website, social media, also your LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, so people can reach out to you. But you guys have an amazing schedule of flights this year. You're going to be in Vegas coming soon, the next year, and all these different partnerships that I know that are coming up. And it's for us, for Future Space, has been tremendously pleasant and such a pleasure to work with you guys. So we're really happy.
The feeling's absolutely mutual. And I actually have a surprise for you and for your listeners. So we have created a discount code for Future of Space listeners. If you go to our website, if you're interested in flying with us, and you go to our website at go0g.com and book a seat on a flight, enter the discount code PENGUIN, and you will get $900 off your seat. And that's for listeners of the Future Space podcast. We hope to see your listeners on board soon.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. Penguins. Well, next year we're going to have to do turtle for the Galapagos or something.
The Galapagos, yep.
And then we have to fly some turtles or some iguanas. We're gonna have to talk about that.
We have to maybe not live ones, but we want to find a large stuffed tortoise that we can bring on the airplane to float.
Let's do something. This is the funniest part. Is every time that we say that we've flown penguins in 0G, and we even say plush penguins, they don't record the plush penguins, and they're like, penguins? You've flown penguins in the plane. It's like, no, plush penguins.
When I first told our airline partner, Everett's Air Cargo in Alaska, who helps operate the airplane for us, when I told their chief inspector that we were going to fly 275 penguins on the airplane, his immediate reaction was, "Oh my God, they're going to crap all over your airplane." I said, no, they're stuffed. It's going to be okay.
There's a scientific paper on penguins pooping. I have to send it to you because there's some laminar flow going on. So I'm pretty sure there's a scientific experiment to have penguin pooping in 0 gravity.
I'm willing to do it if that researcher wants to come fly with us.
Excellent. Kevin, it's always a pleasure, and looking forward for our next time together.
Thank you very much. It's been fun talking to you today, and looking forward to seeing you soon.
Ciao.
Bye.